So, lone rider here, and out for a brief ride, and decided to stop because something occurred to me. There's two ideas melding together. One was the fact that it's nice weather. I've seen a lot of people also out riding today, people who clearly aren't avid cyclists. Some of them don't even seem to have helmets. Some of their bikes don't seem to fit, but they're out and having a good time because it's nice weather today. So, more power to them. The second thing is that of course, yesterday the President declared a national state of emergency due to fear of coronavirus infection and spread. And it's obviously something that all of us are a little bit concerned about as rational people who don't want to needlessly take risk of getting sick. But it's unfortunately something that I think people are also trying to overly hype. The media really has an interest in keeping things calm, right? And so, between the legitimate concern and between the hype and the scareologists, let's say, in the media, these two ideas sort of came together in my head as I was riding, and I said, you know, they're making it seem like it's the apocalypse. And then thinking about all the bikes and myself riding as well, I said, you know, it is kind of funny that whenever you have a fictional presentation of an apocalypse, whether it's a viral outbreak, zombies, alien invasion, whatever, there are no bicycles. This is something that I've talked about before, but I think it's very important to point out that, and this is a little tongue-in-cheek here, I'm kind of using this to make a point, but a bicycle is a very practical thing to have in your emergency kit, if you will. Right? Let's run down the advantages of a bike. Right? One, pretty much everybody either has one or can get one. Right? They're fairly low cost. They don't take up a lot of room. Compared to storing let's say an ATV or a motorcycle or another car, or a car if you don't have one already. They're relatively low cost to maintain, and they're basically free to run. Right? So you have it's very accessible. It doesn't take up a lot of room or cost a lot of money to just keep it in case you need it. Even if you're not a cyclist who's actually going to be riding regularly, and of course. When you do use it, whether it's regularly or occasionally, it doesn't cost anything. And then we have the fourth thing, of course, is that because it doesn't cost anything, there's no need to supply extra fuel, so you're not unable to use it if, for example, there's a power outage which shuts down all the pumps at area gas stations. Then you have the choice of either waiting in line for that one gas station that still has electricity to pump gas, and the line stretches for like a mile and a half, or not having access to gas at all, and then you can't. You have a car, but you can't use it, or you have an ATV or motorbike, but you can't use it. Whereas with this, it doesn't cost anything. Right? Fifth thing, they're not as hard to operate as people think. People who aren't cyclists would have you believe that you have to be a superhuman athlete or somebody who's like training for the race across America to ride on a regular basis, whether it's to the next town or the next county. No. That's not true. And in fact, most trips in this country are fairly short, statistically under 5 miles, except for trips where you couldn't actually ride there realistically because there's, let's say, an interstate in the way or something. Most of these could be accomplished by bike, depending on what it is you're carrying. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to go to the archery range with my longbow and my arrows and all of that on my bike. That would just be impractical. But, generally speaking, bicycling is sort of a useful thing, at least for around town stuff, for errands, whatever, as well as just being fun, right? And I think, honestly, one of the reasons that you don't see bicycles presented in the fictional accounts of apocalypsi, I'm not sure what the plural is, there's two reasons for it. One, a cultural marginalization of cycling, where people think that if you ride a bike, you're either some subhuman person who got their license taken away because they were on drugs or whatever, or drunk, or you're a superhuman athlete, endurance person, whatever. And the reality is most of us we're just regular people. We fall in the middle of the human spectrum, right? And yeah, to a non-cyclist saying, we did a 100-mile ride one day and we were back by noon, most people would look at you who aren't cyclists and say, oh my God, that's impossible. But if you ask them, would they consider a shorter distance, let's say, I went out for a ride for 20 miles. Most of them would still think that's impossible. The reality is they would think nothing of driving for 20 miles or catching an Uber for 20 miles. The idea of bicycling for 20 miles, they figure, well, yeah, because there's no gas, you have to power it yourself. Yes, but you have mechanical advantages. gears, even in the case of a single speed or a fixed gear bike with one gear ratio like this, you still have a mechanical advantage from that one gear ratio. It's not as hard as people think. Right? And I think they're trying to get people to think it's hard, or to culturally marginalize cycling, because they can't make any money off you and they can't regulate you if you ride a bike, right? I mean, let's face it. If there was a way to charge people as much money and regulate people as much as they do with cars, with bikes, everybody and their brother would be encouraged to bicycle, and it would be culturally trumpeted as a wonderful thing. But since they can't sell you a roadside service plan, charge you for fuel, charge you excessive insurance, regulate you, keep track of you, now they want these self-driving cars. The government's going to know, or corporations are going to know where everybody is at all times, as well as the sensors and cameras, creating a constantly updating composite real-time surveillance network of every street in America. If they could regulate you and tax you and make as much money off you with bicycles as they could with cars, we'd all be bicycling. But instead, it's only those of us who do it for fun or fitness or necessity or whatever that ride bikes. I choose to bicycle. I own a car. I would rather not use it for certain things. And frankly, I find cycling fun. I'm a cyclist. I enjoy it. Which brings me to the next thing. It is, in fact, useful, right? Now, there's this cultural marginalization of cycling. There's also this idea that, well, if you bicycle, you're either like some superhuman athlete or you're like some dork. The reality, of course, is most people fall in the middle. But I think there are a lot of people who, when you look at movies and you say, well, how come, in like the Planet of the Apes or the Book of Eli or The Walking Dead, you never see anybody on a bike? And the answer, I think, is that the directors feel that it would look stupid because cyclists aren't cool. Right? Personally, I think some dude on a bike with a sawed-off shotgun riding down through a street through a wasteland would look pretty cool. Of course, a sawed-off shotgun makes anybody look cool, right? But in all seriousness, the bicycles are practical, they're useful, and I think if you're worried about an apocalypse, whether some fictional thing like alien invasion or zombies, or whether you're worried about something more realistic, like there may be a virus outbreak, whether it reaches apocalyptic proportions or not. Of course, I think a lot of this is hysteria, but nevertheless, bicycles are useful, right? And we saw this in the aftermath of several storms here in New Jersey, for example, hurricanes. Roads were blocked, so cars couldn't get through. I could just get through on my bike. If it was really blocked, I just picked the bike up and walk around. I didn't have to wait for gas. I didn't run out of gas when everybody else ran out of gas. And I could carry enough stuff to do basic things. I could carry a larger backpack, much larger than this. I could carry groceries. I could carry 2 6-packs. I once carried a fax machine on my back. I've ridden home with spare parts, including a whole bike frame and a pair of wheels one time on my back. And I haven't tried it because I don't want to scare the neighbors or have somebody call the cops on me. But I'm pretty sure you could ride down the street with a rifle slung over your shoulder or a bow and arrow or whatever, if that's your thing and you're worried about the zombie apocalypse. So basically, a bike is useful. You're not going to get stranded when you run out of gas. It doesn't cost anything to maintain. Anybody can have one. Oh, and by the way, in the advent of an emergency, everybody else will be stuck in traffic, and you'll be able to get past and get out. So, there you go. Get a bike, and if you want to be prepared, and even if you don't, because bikes are cool and fun. One rider out.